Welcome in and welcome to the Legacy Ride. We got yet another special guest for you. I am the legacy of Jennifer Ant Kaiser. This is, you missed it, Andrew Joseph. and welcome into the Legacy Ride. And before we get into the show and introduce our guests, we got to, you know how I got to do this, Andrew. I got to plug. Got to put in the plug. Got to do it for my cousin. Small business makes the world go around. Makes it's the reason why America became America too. So I mean, but yeah. So in that sense, fanghornforesters.com. You know, Fanghorn, the leader of the Ents from Lord of the Rings. My family were a bunch of Ents. His last name still Ent. So fanghornforesters.com. For all your woodworking needs and necessities. He does millwork, and if you got a construction project that's going down, I mean, he's definitely more than willing to come to you. And he may be in the greater Cincinnati, southeastern Indiana area, but he'll definitely come to you wherever. But from there, let's go ahead and take off. So we got Econ Bro in the de facto studio, the digital studio of the Legacy Ride today on this beautiful Saturday morning here stateside. Obviously, he is coming all the way from Africa, and we're glad to have him here for today and for this episode. So, how are you doing today, sir?
Well, I'm doing very good. It's 3 in the afternoon here. It's very sunny outside, but I suspect it's going to rain soon. So yeah, it's great to be here. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you for coming on. So yeah, speaking of sun, the sun's starting to peek out through the fog here. So as we're finally getting into the afternoon. So, but let's get down to business though. Like the state of the world today. I mean, let a little bit about yourself, Econ. Just for our listeners and just what is the aura of Econ Bro? So
I went to university like like many people here do, studied economics at school. And I mean, it's no surprise to anyone that Africa is an extremely poor, Nigeria is an extremely poor country. Africa is poor, but Nigeria is also pretty poor. So I just got tired of all the poverty and suffering and hunger and and all the madness going on here. And then I decided to do something about it. Do what I mean, everyone is leaving the country now. It's most people going to the West are leaving are coming from Nigeria. They left Nigeria to go to Canada, to the United Kingdom, to America, all different places all over the world. We even have people going to Dubai and neighboring countries in Africa. Things are that bad here. So people are fleeing not just because of poverty, but because of other problems in the society. We had, I don't know if you've heard of Boko Haram. They were the leading terrorist group in the world. A couple of years ago, they swore allegiance to ISIS. So they sort of, should I say, went a bit inactive. And then the popular narrative is that the Boko Haram soldiers eventually stopped fighting for the cause and then became kidnappers. So they go to farms, rural communities, kill people and steal their crops, and then they kidnap people and ask their families for ransom. So it's a very terrible thing. You can't travel by road because of those bandits. They shoot up your car and then kidnap you and take you call your family for ransom. And sometimes they end up even killing the people after ransom is being paid. An airport was attacked. I think it was early this year or late last year. The train, we don't have lots of trains here, but the one of the trains we had was attacked not too far from where I live. So there's a lot of chaos everywhere. So people are leaving. So I decided I was going to do something about it, right? Um, so this is a journey of maybe almost 10 years that I'm trying to fit into a couple of minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So a while ago, I started to look into economic solutions, being an economist by training. And then,
Mm-hmm.
long story short, I came across Austrian economics, and that's how I started to learn other libertarian ideas. So I was looking for economic solutions, and then I
Mm-hmm.
also found, um, um, should I say, libertarian solutions. Basically, I found out the same reason why we have economic problems, which is intervention of the state. It's the same
Mm-hmm.
reason. It's the same reason why we have these security and political problems. It's still because of the state. So I made it my duty this year to go about teaching young people and old people, if they're willing to listen.
Mm-hmm.
I made it my duty to teach them these principles in hope of perhaps getting an educated voter base in the coming maybe 3, 4, 5, 10 years, who knows, or to make enough noise to be picked up by a well-meaning politician, as an
Mm-hmm.
advisor of sorts. So that's just why I've been doing what I've been doing and how I got here, basically. And
Mm-hmm.
I've made a lot of great friends on the way, so it's all good.
Yeah, I've noticed like I've started following you, and you've got like, quite a following on Twitter or X or whatever they're calling it now too. So I mean, you're definitely making some moves. So I mean, what as far as what's uh, what's going on? I mean, I mean Africa in general, but Nigeria, I mean, has so many social issues. It all stems when it all comes down to it. Like you hit it right there. Like it all stems economically, but where would you say it kind of starts at? Like because of all these issues, would it be the the colonialization, the imperialism over the years historically? I mean, that could have an issue, and then I mean, from what I know of, which is not much, but it seems like Africa in general made up more tribal, and it's like this in like the Middle East too, and even in the United States, like with the tribe, like you don't have the idea of this westernized boundary, but then you come in like the British Empire, the French Empire, even the United States or even China, they set up the imaginary lines, and then it kind of separates tribals or tribes and other people that would be kind of niche, like in an ally or culture, like very similar in culture, and then you're stuffing in tribes that have been rivals for like millennia, all in
Yeah.
one area. So like, would that be one of the issues when it comes to the poverty and the social and political issues in say Nigeria?
Well, so let me talk about colonialism. It's a double-edged sword here.
Yeah.
It brought us electricity, technology,
Mm-hmm.
better economics, but then it
Mm-hmm.
also took it. It also brought the divisions of which you spoke. Um,
Mm-hmm.
um, so so Nigeria has about 250 distinct peoples, a
Mm-hmm.
minimum of 250. Interesting story. There is a state here in Nigeria that has this ethnic group where they have three languages. In one ethnic group, they have three languages. The men have their language, the women have their language, and then they have a common language. So we
Mm-hmm.
have a whole lot of biological and ethnic, tribal, cultural diversity here, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when the British came here, they just put everyone together. And something they did that was kind of evil. So we have the people up north in northern Nigeria. They were colonized by people from the Middle East. So they are mostly, at least now, they are mostly Muslims. But they have up north, they have similar traditions, similar foods, languages. And of course, Islam was the uniting factor in the northern part of Nigeria. Islam was what united them. So you have tribes in northern Nigeria that are very, very similar in almost every way to people in Niger and Mali and countries north of Nigeria, right? So they carved a part of should I say northern Africa, and then they took a part of West Africa and then a part of Central Africa, and so completely different cultures merged them together into one big disgusting melting pot. So no one, we don't trust each other here. All the ethnic groups are at each other's throats. And I think, now I know my people hate me for this, but I think the uniting factor, the only thing that unites us, is maybe the common language, English, and the common identity, Nigeria. There's no Nigerian identity. There's no Nigerian identity. We have Yoruba people, Hausa people, Igbo people. These are the three major ethnic groups. And then we have, as I said, 240 something other ethnic groups. So putting all these people together was a very, very big mistake, especially when they had other peoples in other parts of Africa. So they separated brothers in different parts of Africa to carve out this place called Nigeria. And then some people suggest that it was done intentionally to keep this region divided. I don't know much about that history, but that's how it's playing out. You know, we are very, very, very divided here. There's no trust. So yes, the white men, the West, England to be, the UK in particular, Britain brought a lot of good things, but they also brought a lot of bad. However, that being said, if Britain did not come to Africa, to Nigeria specifically, if they did not come here, I'm absolutely certain that we would still have been at each other's throats. We would have been killing one another, selling one another into slavery in the Middle East, and basically to anyone who was willing to buy. So, so at least that was, because a lot of people here say Britain is the cause of all our problems. If they had left us alone, we would have been like Wakanda. I don't believe that. That's absolute rubbish. We had child sacrifices here. We still do, by the way. It's not. It's hidden. It's no longer in the mainstream. But we had child sacrifices. We still do have. There are some horror stories that would make your blood boil if I tell you. You know, and we still have child sacrifices here. Again, as I've said, it's not done in the open as it used to be, but it's a thing here. They used to kill twins because they believed, in the southern part of Nigeria, they believed twins were some bad, they were a bad omen or something of the sort. So they used to, when they give birth to twins, they take them to an evil forest and leave them there to die. You know, it was a Scottish girl, a Scottish woman by the name of Mary Slessor, who stopped the killing of twins. You know, so a lot of good came from the British coming here. So it's not all bad. And again, my people are going to absolutely hate me for this, but I wish they stayed here long enough for Western values to stick. I wish they stayed here. Now, whether or not Western values, we could have adopted Western values is something I question, because the Westerners were in Africa, in South Africa, up till maybe the early 90s. That was when they pulled out. And though South Africa is more technologically and infrastructurally developed than almost everywhere else in the rest of Africa, the let me say the white man's training didn't accept the white man's training. So so maybe if they had been here a little longer, and I know, again, I said people are going to want to kill me for this, but it's the truth. If they had been here long enough, long enough to instill better values in our people, I think maybe we might have accepted it, and Nigeria or at least Africa would have been much better than it is today. Also, another thing to add to this is that when Nigeria gained her independence, when most African countries gained it was around 1950s, 1960s.
Yeah.
The reason why they fought for independence was because they got support from the Soviet Union. So, so that's why you see the so-called African heroes were all communists. They were all socialists, right? So it's not like we were pushing for independence because we had our own things we wanted to do. It was just basically socialism, right? Fortunately, Nigeria didn't get the brunt of it. Places like Zimbabwe, like Ghana, like the Congo, Uganda, they got real socialism. Fortunately for us, we didn't get full-blown socialism, and that's why we're not as terrible as other places in Africa. So yeah, I know I'm all over the place, but I hope my point is getting across.
Well, yeah, like culture is always going to be there. Like no matter what, it's kind of hard to like mold different. When you have so much diversity in culture, it's hard to break that generational. But I mean, I think I agree. Like I think the way that the colonialism did fall, it was almost like take the British Empire, they kind of had to they had to relieve themselves because they were indebted. Both world wars plus an economic depression prior to the 50s just totally decimated them. So they just couldn't fund the empire anymore. I think maybe for that point, I mean, not to say that I advocate for colonialism, but there were good things and that came out of it. And if there was a way to hold on to those possessions and allow everybody to just kind of peacefully divorce, like just through a gradual pace, it would have worked. I mean, you could have still molded a better future in that time, and then you wouldn't have all this chaos, and you wouldn't have you wouldn't be on the fences of the Cold War essentially. So at that point, and you wouldn't have so much strife and then so much tribalism. I mean, we talk about tribalism in this country because politics, I mean, divides, but I mean, we fail in comparison to that in like Nigeria. I mean, all that population and all those different peoples. I mean, you're gonna have a lot of conflict, and we're bitching about abortion and gun rights,
transgender bathrooms
and transgender bathrooms. Like you guys actually, you can get literally your head blown off just for talking about what you're talking about right now, and we're talking about transgender bathrooms. Who gives a fuck? So, I mean, but no, that's fascinating stuff, and that's one thing I wanted to dive into a little bit. It's like just the mold of the culture. But speaking of your background in university, where did you go to university? Was it in Nigeria? Did you go Europe for university or?
I'm not at liberty to say now because I can tell you while we're not recording, but because people in my country have no respect for privacy. Doxing is not. I know people dox over there, but it's taboo to dox someone over there in the West. It's not here, right? They could, if people find, that's why I use my name. That's why I use Econ Bro rather than my actual name, right? Now there are people who know who I am. There are people who have seen me on maybe Larry Sharp Show or Rothbard Radio, and they know who I am, and they are cool enough to not say anything about it. But I'm not popular here, but I'm beginning to annoy a lot of mainstream reporters and economists and financial analysts here. I'm beginning to get on their nerves, and I don't want to be caught. I don't want to expose myself, and I'm still too small
it's too risky.
It's too risky at this time for me to talk about exactly. I can tell you everything off recording, off camera, but so
no, that's we'll segue that. That's a great transition. Like the issue, it sounds, is like the privacy aspect. But like here, I mean, we're starting to see a little bit with like state agencies kind of utilizing that security apparatus, and then neighbors snitching on one another. But over there, it just seems like it's just not a thing. Like we have say the Fourth Amendment. Like we have the right to our personal privacy and not to be seized with I mean, or searched or any of the like, I mean, within our own person. And that goes for anybody and everybody. And then you have to hesitate, like, oh, hold up, I gotta stay a little bit vigilant, because you just don't know. You don't know what to expect. So I mean, why do you think that is over there? If you don't mind me asking.
Again, it's Western values, right? Specifically American values that we don't have here. Free speech. People don't think of free speech the same way. The same way you guys do. So you are just not allowed to say certain things here. You're not allowed to say certain things. And people don't have the common decency to just disagree with another person, right? If I disagree with you, I must say horrible things about you, maybe harm you if I can. That's how, and again, they're going to hate me for this, but that's how most people here think. So it's very refreshing when I meet my people here who respect privacy and free speech. And again, I think it also comes from, apart from the cultural aspect of it, I think it also comes from the fact that we had a military dictatorship for decades before we got democracy in 1999, right? So Nigeria was from 1960. I think just a few years after independence in 1960, we had a military coup, very bloody military coup, and then we had a brief couple of years of civilian rule of democracy. After that, maybe it was like a year or so, and then the military took over again, and then we continued under the military till 1999, and then we've had democracy, which isn't working out so great either. So so there was a how do I people turned on their neighbors then, right? People snitched during the military regime. People told on their neighbors. So I don't know, we still have that left over even now, that although I'm all over the place. Democracy here is really no different than the military rule, because we still have the police pick people up, the military pick people up. I mean, our last president, he just got sworn out of office a couple of months ago. Somebody tweeted something about his wife, and how his wife so his wife was a skinny woman when she became first lady, and 8 years after, she became super thick, and not the good kind of thick. So so somebody tweeted, she's stealing our money and eating our money, that's why she's so thick. And he was found, and he was picked up by the secret police here, the DSS, that's what they call them. It's the secret police. So he was picked up, and he was tortured till he apologized and came in public and started to. Now, this is just last year.
Yeah.
Last year. So that kind of thing. I know it happens over there, but it's not as brazen, as openly as it happens here.
Yeah.
So I don't know what's responsible. I can't tell you what's responsible for it. Maybe it's our culture, maybe it's the military. I don't know. I don't know what's responsible.
It sounds like the social credit system that they have in North Korea, and that what they're trying to implement in China.
Yeah. Believe it's not as bad. People still have the ability to talk. Right? But you just have to be very, very careful. So someday, I'm going to be, I hope to be big enough to be untouchable, because there is a certain level you can attain. And now my going on Western podcasts is not an accident, right? I could be looking for shows within my country. I could be doing that, and I would have I would probably have greater success than I have with getting on Western shows. But I'm doing this for a reason. So if I have some form of international recognition, it will be more difficult for people when I start to talk, because I have stories to tell. I have stories to tell. So when I actually start to talk about things that even Nigerians here don't know is going on, right? When I start to talk about these things, it will be very difficult to harm me at that point. Right?
Yes.
So,
you have a sort of immunity.
Yeah.
Which is good, because I mean, if you can get big enough to where they can't you are untouchable in your own country, then you can start actually truly building that movement of liberty and sound economics and just privacy, into true independence and freedom for you and your people. So and let it resonate all the way down, like let it domino effect. You know, I mean, started in Nigeria. After you get up to that level, and then it domino effects and hopefully spreads that liberty message into the rest of Africa, and then hopefully Middle East, and so on and so forth. Not the United States way of going in and bombing the democracy out of you. So, but
by the way, let me point this out. I don't think it's possible to be entirely untouchable, right? Our former central bank governor, the former central bank governor, known all over the world, like he's a public figure. He was arrested. Although they've come to an agreement, and he was just released yesterday, I think. But no one is entirely untouchable. But it just makes it less. If I'm arrested, it's unlikely that I will be Epstein or something.
John McAfee.
Yeah, but I most certainly can be arrested.
But it'll be easier to survive that scenario and do your time, and maybe even be able to get a little bit yanked off and get back to business. So, but I mean, Nigeria needs someone like you to spread that message, and I mean, it sounds like the point, and you mentioned this, and you've also mentioned it in like the other podcasts I've heard you in. Like, it all starts with trying to resonate that message to the young people. So, how are you trying to get to the young people in your country to listen to the ideas of free market economics and more libertarian values in politics?
Well, first of all, it's there is a hunger for knowledge here. People are very interested in learning alternative ways of doing things, and people are rising up to fill that vacuum. The socialists are rising up to fill that vacuum. The socialists here are not as deplorable as the socialists I see in the West. Your socialists there are the absolute worst. The socialists in the West are terrible people. So the socialists here are actually good people. In my opinion, they are good people who just don't know any better. Right. So I have better relationships with the socialists here. I actually kind of like them. I have better relationships with the socialists here than I do with the neoliberals, with the mainstream. Right. So because we have, at least at this point, we have a common goal, which is getting rid of the status quo. So we can at least agree on that. So they believe marijuana should be decriminalized, should be made legal, right? And I believe all drugs should be decriminalized, all recreational drugs, every single one. They don't agree with that, but we can work. We can work on at least marijuana, right? So I'm willing to work with the socialists on one or two issues. Anyway, so back to what I was saying. So socialists are rising to fill that vacuum, and I'm not just going to sit down and watch that happen. So what I do is I get contacts with maybe I make a contact at a university. Maybe I have people all over the countries. Perfectly normal to have a brother or a cousin or a sister, or a friend. So I have people all over the country. So I asked them, do you know someone at insert university? And then they get me the person's number, and I talk to them, and they always like the idea, right? I've not spoken to anyone in person who went, this is rubbish. They're all interested in the ideas. So
Just a second. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
We had to pause for a break. We'll be right back.
We'll be back.
Lightning is not convenient. It has liquidity issues. It's way overcomplicated. It doesn't let me just put a QR code on my website. Like, what the fuck? Lightning's a fucking dumpster fire.
What we've seen is the evolution of the protocol from something that was early and, you sent a transaction and you hoped it would work.
Every time you sent a payment, you were like, is this one going to go through or not?
But sometimes it didn't. And there's this idea of liquidity on Lightning, meaning that you need capital on the network in order to both send and receive payments on Lightning.
Our super well-connected node that has channels, all over the place, being able to service, maybe someone that doesn't have good liquidity, and so you still, that will facilitate a successful payment that would have otherwise failed.
The nature of the nodes on Lightning is those nodes earn fees when people send transactions, so they actually want to route transactions.
People that are just have, large amounts of Bitcoin in treasury or something, where that capital is going to sit trying to earn, routing fees and things like that on it.
And then you have this idea of efficiency. So with Lightning, you could have well-placed nodes.
Our super well-connected node
where you can send and receive because they're centrally located with good connections.
That has channels, all over the place.
And then you're actually going to have more efficient routing on the network.
That will facilitate a successful payment that would have otherwise failed.
My problem with Lightning is that they extrapolated this idea that payment channels are cool for one hop, so let's make a multi-hop payment channel network. And that shit doesn't work. You need massive liquidity. You have route finding problems. You're literally barking down like the nastiest engineering challenges in the space, like period. And the only way it will be reliable is if there are more centralized entities on that network.
Our super well-connected node
that manage your channels for you. So you basically have an account somewhere. They manage your channels.
They let you park your money there. You earn a yield. They collect fees for processing transactions. It's almost like a bank. And let's say G lives in Russia and they want to send money to E, who lives in America, but there's a war in Ukraine. Well, damn, I guess B, who's located in the USA, is going to take G and say, nope, I can't do business with you anymore. And G might say, well, where's my money? I gave you money to earn interest.
We are back. So,
yeah,
so go ahead, Econ. So get back to your point.
Yeah, okay. So whenever I talk to these people at the university, they are usually eager to hear what I have to say, very excited about it. And then they start to gather. So I just give them instructions, right? Get me 50 students and or as many as I can afford. And then so I did the last one in June. I'm hoping to have the next one in November. And then I want to do one again in December. So I want to keep doing it every month. It's just my hands are tied financially, right? So it's difficult to do that. So so I gather them and then I start to talk to them about the most. So my focus for the young people is, and even for the old people, is economics. That's my focus, right? Because everyone here is hungry. Things are prices are skyrocketing. Price inflation is at an all-time high, and things are just very, very terrible altogether here. So because of that, people are very eager to hear solutions to economic problems. So my last seminar, we spoke about money, its origin, central banking, the Austrian business cycle theory, inflation, money alternatives. So I just basically the entire first seminar was a seminar. It was 4 hours, and I had to draw the line at some point. Like, we can't go any further because I would have to pay an extension on the hotel hall that I rented, right? And I didn't have the money to do that. So they just kept asking questions, and We spoke about taxes and subsidies and all that other nonsense that governments do. So they are really interested. They're actually waiting for me to return with another edition, because there's still so much for them to talk about and for us to talk about. So when I get them hooked on economics, right? So when I get them hooked on economics, they agree. So they agree that, okay, this makes sense. Then I start to talk to them about political solutions, not just economics. So I introduce proper libertarian philosophy as a whole. However, among the first set of 50 or so people that I gathered, I asked, we had a group where we chat and where we interact, and then I posted on the group telling them I was going to close the group and start another group on a more secure chat service, right? And I asked them to, those who are interested in actually getting to work, I asked them to join me on this new group, and a couple of them agreed to join me on the new group. So the serious ones. So I got those people with a couple of other people that I met on Twitter, Nigerians that I met on Twitter. So we started this group, and I tried to ease them into Austrian economics, and not knowing that because they've been following me on Twitter, they've been seeing my tweets and been seeing my interactions with people, so they are following these people. I'm sure maybe one or two of them are following you, who knows. So they've been seeing, I didn't know how much they've been learning. So I wanted to ease it in, talk about money and markets. And then on this new group, the first topic was anarchy. How can we end the state? So it was very overwhelming, but in a good way, right? So so I'm not going to say how many people there are on that group, but I have people scattered in different places across the country who are willing to learn these things in detail and to go out there to actually to do what I'm doing, get on shows, and we plan to interact with mainstream economists on TV, on the radio. I'm trying to get people who, because as I said, 250 ethnic groups with different languages, right? So I'm trying to get some of these people I want to train them, and then they will teach these things to people in their local dialects, in their languages, right? Because at the end of the day, people like myself, people who live in major cities, people who have an education, we are still the minority in the country, right? The majority of people in the country, they live in villages, and they don't know anything about anything, right? There are people in this country that do not have any internet access whatsoever, and I'm not saying maybe a few million people, maybe tens of millions of people, in villages who don't have running water. They don't have my village where I'm from, my village, they don't have electricity there, right? So they have these pocket radios they listen to. So I'm trying to get people to learn these things and teach it. And see, the good thing about Austrian economics and libertarian principles is that you don't need to be overly, you don't need an education to understand these things, right? If I can explain to you logically why criminalizing drugs is the wrong thing to do, you don't need to have gone to university to study political science to understand what I'm saying. You don't need to get a degree in economics to understand when I explain Austrian economics to people. It's just logic. So, and Nigerians are actually very, very smart people. They are very, very smart people. If you explain it to them, especially those who haven't been indoctrinated by university, by the nonsense they are receiving from the West, right? Especially those who, and you know what I'm talking about, those who are receiving progressive, everything we receive here is progressivism. We don't get, as terrible as Fox News is, we don't get Fox News here, right? We only get MSNBC and CNN, and we get Al Jazeera, BBC. So everything that we are being fed here is progressive nonsense, right? But the people on the outskirts, the people in the villages, the people, what you guys would call the open country, the people in the country, they don't have any of that indoctrination, right? They still have basic common sense. So once you explain things to them, they get it. So that's basically what this Nigerian Liberty Project is. Just train these people and spread them out. Train these people and send them out. Train them and send them out. So yeah, that's I hope something comes of it.
No, that's fascinating because I'm gonna spread it out and then hopefully it'll kind of close in. Yeah, and then you can fix a psyche because that's all it is. It's, I mean, me and Andrew have talked both recording and just amongst each other, and I mean economics, especially on the Austrian school, it coincides very well with psychology because it all comes down to the psychological makeup of all of us as individuals and within a social collective construct too. It just comes down to what we think and what we think logically, the rationality of what we're doing, and then you go on to the basic principle of Austrian economics, which is just straight up human action. So, I mean, voluntary cooperation, and most people in villages, I mean, that have to rely on each other. They're constantly in a voluntary relationship. They have to build relationships in order to get things done. They're going to have to trade like one cow for actual relatively clean well water. I mean, and go from there. And that's real market value right there. So
what you said now just reminded me of something that happened last year and into the beginning of this year. So I tweeted, I don't know if you know Matt Smith. He hosts the podcast with Doug Casey. So I'm a big fan of theirs. So Matt Smith tweeted something at me that Professor Saint Onge tweeted about Nigerians rejecting CBDCs. I don't know if you've heard that story, that they tried to push CBDCs and it didn't work. Nigerians rejected it. So that story is incorrect. That's not what happened at all. The government was not trying to push CBDCs. That wasn't what was happening. All the reporting on this that I've seen is terrible. So I think I'm going to write an article and post it on the Mises. I'll send it to the Mises Institute in hope that they will post what actually happened. Now, the government was not trying to push central bank, and I'm going somewhere with this story. The government it wasn't trying to push central bank digital currencies. What actually happened was, or what happens is, during elections in this country, here in Nigeria, people buy votes. They literally pay people for votes, maybe about $5. About $5, and then you sell your vote for 4 years, and then you come back another 4 years, they give you $5, and that's how it is in the local communities, right? So the president and they buy the votes in cash. So the president was trying to stop people from the last president from buying votes with cash. So he restricted cash transactions for that period. So he said all transactions should be digital, right? So he wasn't trying to push central bank, especially now. We more so than I know it's now more so looking at it retrospectively. I knew it then, but that it was purely political. So his goal was not to further the global agenda. That wasn't his goal. His goal was just to stop people buying votes. And immediately after the elections, in May, right? Yeah. Sorry, in February, cash returned. So I heard a lot of people tell that story like it's a victory for liberty. That wasn't what happened at all. Nigerians did not push back against the cashless thing. They didn't push back against it. We bent over and took it. So Nigeria is not. If we're going to, we have to be truthful. If liberty, if people are pushing against dystopia, we have to use real examples. So now, so the reason why I brought this up is because of the thing you said about barter, right? When cash became scarce in the country. People couldn't get cash. In communities up north, I have a friend who trades up north. People were trading, they resorted to barter. Right? People resorted to barter up north. Some people even adopted the currency of West African Francophone countries. They started to use their currency. So this is proof that without government legal tender, people can still do business and be successful. Now, I had hoped that they would continue the cashless thing for longer, not because I'm a statist, but because there are states in Nigeria that have very huge, very large amounts of gold and silver. There are states in Nigeria where we are rich in gold and silver. Now, there's a lot of fighting in that region. Like a lot of people are, and it's all because of the state. Perhaps another time we can talk about that specifically, how the state is responsible for the I'm not going to speak any further, but the state is basically responsible for every terrorist group, every gang. They always have ties to the state one way or another.
Yeah,
so they always have ties to the state. So there are people fighting in a state called Zamfara State here. It has large deposits of gold. They've been fighting for decades. They've been fighting for decades. The reason why is because of the gold that is there. And I don't want to say here because I want to live. So I don't want to say how the state is exactly involved in that, but we could talk about that some other time.
Sounds good.
So because if they didn't have fighting in those regions that have gold, I believe gold would have emerged as money in those areas, or silver. I believe that very, very strongly. Gold and silver would have emerged as money in those parts of the country. But because it didn't last long enough, the cash squeeze ended after a few months. People resorted back to using the legal tender. So I just thought it was an interesting thing that people found alternatives to currency, to money at that time.
And speaking of alternatives, and I know Andrew's been patiently waiting to ask you about this perspective, but Andrew, why don't you take it away? Because I know you're itching. He's itching on the crypto talk.
Well, I'm curious as to how it's developed down there. Like if it's something that's slowly rolling out, or if it's common knowledge, or what the deal is with that.
Yeah, okay. So people know about cryptocurrencies here. A lot of people use Bitcoin and Ethereum. No, let me not say use. They don't use it in transactional. So they use it as an inflation hedge here to hold. Yeah. So some people use it as an inflation hedge. Others use it as some form of investment, hoping maybe Bitcoin prices will rise. And this also, Bitcoin has been here for a long time, a very long. I regret when I first heard of it in the early 2010s. I regret not jumping into it at that time, because I would have been, I would have been able to fund all my projects by myself, right? So it has been here for a long time, but it has always been a fringe phenomenon here. However, once COVID hit and people were sitting at home with nothing to do, they started to look for places to invest their money, what little money they had. So a lot of people bought Bitcoin, and that time it was on the rise when it peaked. A lot of people bought, and then when Bitcoin prices eventually fell again, a lot of people were discouraged. So that sort of killed. So the reason why that happened is because people are not thinking of Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies. They don't think of them as money. They think of them as assets, as investments, right? Which I think is actually, I don't think that's right. If we start to see it as actual money, because nobody uses Bitcoin or Ethereum or Monero in trade here. Nobody does that. Nobody accepts it anywhere. People just hold it so that they can hedge against inflation and maybe sell it at a later date to get to make sure their money doesn't lose value or maybe increases in value, right? So So I personally I'm a gold bug. I believe gold is the ultimate form of money, right? And I've been very closed-minded towards cryptocurrencies until very, very recently. So there is a friend of mine, his at Fiat Demise. He has been a very, very great help in teaching me about cryptocurrencies, Monero in particular. But he has me looking into Bitcoin. He sends me resources. So I've been reading up on it, and although I know it doesn't exactly fit into Mises's regression theory, it doesn't fit as, I mean, you have to sort of squeeze it for it to fit into Mises's regression theorem of money. But it serves the purpose. It serves the purpose. It is a useful thing. I would accept cryptocurrencies in a second if you meant fiat. I mean, even if you meant gold would cease to exist, right? If fiat has to go and gold and silver has to go with it, if that's the only way fiat can go, I'm all for it. To hell with gold and silver if it means fiat has to go, and then we use cryptocurrencies. It serves the purpose very, very beautifully. And yeah, so I've recently just opened a Bitcoin fund, a Kuno fundraiser where I raise Monero, and because it is the most private from everything I've seen so far. It's entirely properly private. So I'm more inclined to be on the Monero side, but all of it is fine for me. All of it is fine for me. It's better than fiat.
Yeah,
so,
it's interesting that you said Monero is you're intrigued with private, because that's Monero, it seems to me, is exactly what Bitcoin was supposed to be. Private, transactionary, inflationary hedge when it comes to the competing of valueless fiat. But I mean, it just seems like that's the root. And another one would be Bitcoin Cash, which was the fork off of Bitcoin when it truly became corrupted. I mean, but and more centralized, I guess you could say. Andrew would be able to talk to you more about this better than me, but I mean, I like that you I mean, Monero seems like the one that might win the day, but
I hope so.
All of them are good, like in the competing factor of exchange media.
Yeah. So I decided to incorporate cryptocurrencies into the curriculum that I teach my students, right? When I go to talk to them, so there is an elderly man, he's in his 60s, who he's retired, right? So he watched the show with Larry Sharp and the one with on Radio Rothbard. He's a Nigerian. So he called, he sent me an email. I saw you on this show. I've been thinking these things for years. I've been reading resources from the Mises Institute, but I didn't know there was anyone else who was interested in this, right? So I got a lot of people contact me because of that. And then he asked me about investments, and we were talking about gold and all that. But right now, based on what I've seen, especially since gold can be traced, and while we have a statist society where your gold can easily be confiscated, I'm not sure if I'm as confident to get people to adopt that at this time. You know, so however, I've decided, of course, I will still talk about gold. It's, as I say, it's God's money, right? It's the money God, or nature, if you don't believe in God. It's the money God gave humanity, gold, silver, metals, right? So I still teach about that, but I'm going to incorporate cryptocurrencies and actually advise people, no matter how little you get, find a stable coin and throw your fiat into that. Because, for instance, the Nigerian naira was about 600 naira to $1 just a couple of months ago, and it's 1,000 plus to $1 in a few months, right? So if people keep holding it's not going to end well. It's not going to end well. So and I mean, where are they going to get gold, right? Where are they going to get gold? Where are they going to get silver? So I'll just advise them, if you want to hedge against inflation, find a stable, preferably private currency, cryptocurrency, and hold your and hold. So.
And if you're and this is the joke that we bring up, if you're Andrew right here, are you mining, by the way?
Not right now, no.
So another way, I mean, if you're able to, the capability is there. Like as soon as you're able to, start mining. Start mining for Monero.
I don't know anything about mining. What maybe we'll talk about that off after the recording, because I'm actually interested in learning more about. I'm a crypto novice. I know absolutely. I only know the economics of it. I don't know the tech. I don't know the details. I don't know anything else. Right. So I just know the economics and the fact that it's private, it's decentralized. At least most of them are. So some of them are. So.
Well, you came to the right place, because Andrew over here he's been reading up on crypto ever since it came about, ever since that he jumped into the Bitcoin craze. He's just like us though, like you and me, like we should have dropped it when it was like $50, like $50 a coin. But I mean, it is what it is. So, but he's really been following it very, very, very well. So he's definitely, especially the Civil War days of Bitcoin.
So is Andrew on Twitter?
Andrew is on Twitter. So
are we following each other? Because
no, we're not. I will find you and I'll send you a message.
Please do, so that we can talk later.
Okay.
Thank you.
We will.
So anything else for me?
So anything before we wrap up? I think that's a great time to probably wrap up, because how much time do we have?
It doesn't exactly say.
So, well, let's go ahead and try to wrap up. You have anything else that Econ Bro can kind of establish here and get out?
I just want to ask, if everybody is hedging with inflation, when a majority of the people who have, say that they're financially better off, what are the things you say can happen when nobody is working because they think they can sell their Bitcoin or whatever they have and be financially independent? What would you say happens down there?
Sorry, I didn't catch that. It's about to rain here, so reception is a bit crazy. Could you repeat that, please?
I'm sorry. You said that everybody's hedging against inflation down there. What happens when a large majority of the population think that they can cash out to try to be, financially independent and not have to work for other people or work to improve the economy? What would you say would happen down there?
So I doubt we have up to 1 million people. I could be wrong, but I don't think we have up to 1 million people who are invested in cryptocurrencies.
Okay.
So it's not like it's the entire country. People in the major cities, yes, and then it's mostly a young people thing, and a lot of people gave up on it when Bitcoin prices fell. So that's not something I worry would happen.
Okay, well, I lack context because I'm not there. I can't know that for sure. So I just figured I'd ask.
Yeah, it seems like they're a little fearful on the aspect of the volatility, because they're still in that mindset. Just like here in the West, we're still pretty much in that mindset. Besides a pocket, where it's a store of value asset, instead of the medium of exchange. So because of that, and they see the price drop, I'm out, and they back away. Yeah. So it's like it just hasn't really taken up a big craze over there, unless you go into maybe the cities, and then you might find your Bitcoiners over there in the major cities.
Yeah. I just hope I'm able to talk to enough people to convince them to accept it in trade. You know, I really hope if I can achieve that, I've done a world of good. If there are stores that accept cryptocurrencies here, and then I mean at that point it's practically game over, because once people start to accept it, the government can't tax that, at least not yet anyway. You know, so once people know there is money you can have that can't be taxed, can't be inflated into oblivion, there's going to be a problem. There's going to be a problem. So yes,
well, that's where it's at. Like real liberty begins on the economic stance of freedom, and that's how we need to decentralize from the state. So, but with that, we'll go ahead and get you on and out of here for the rest of your Saturday. It was awesome that you came on with us, and we'll go ahead and wrap this up. So this is the Legacy Right. And this is Econ Bro. I mean, go ahead and follow him on Twitter. I'll let him shout out everything if he wants. So, did you want?
Yeah, it's just TRUECONBREAU on Twitter. So that's all. TRUECONBREAU. That's where you can find me.
And then that's where you can find us. So at True Econ Bro. And over on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it these days, and then we look for some great takes on everything. So, and give them a follow. So, and then as for that, we'll go ahead and definitely get out of here. So I am the Legacy of Jennifer Ant Kaiser. I am Buckeye Zach, as Andrew would confirm, because OHIO, but Zachary Kaiser. This is
the Legacy Right.
Well, you were supposed to say your name, but yeah, Andrew Joseph. But yeah, this is the Legacy Right. It was great to have Econ Bro. So we will go ahead and send it out. Peace.
Thank you.
Thanks for doing this.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Socialist, and I'd like to welcome you to WCW Baseball.
You know, brother, you think you know what it takes to beat Hollywood Hogan, who wants to climb in the ring and try out the largest arms in the world.
You want to wrestle an inch more Ric Flair, you gotta be able to walk that out and style and profile. Woo!
You really think you're ready for the spin?
You really think you're ready for the Scorpion Deathlock? You think you're ready for a fatal encounter?
This is why they call me the total package. Do you have a pain threshold to withstand the torture rack? Let's find out.
Hallo, hier ist Alex Wright. Wenn ihr High-Flying Wrestling Action wollt, Spinning Sidekick, Top Turnbuckle Dropkick, dann nehmt mich. Der Sieg ist euch sicher. Versprecht euch.
Oh yeah! Watch the flying elbow drop off the top rope. Not only beat people 1, 2, 3, but I hurt him real bad.
It only takes one of 1,000 holes. I think you're man enough for the challenge.
You better be ready to wrestle, because you know, when you're getting in the ring with Eddie Guerrero, it's going to be high-flying and exciting.
Hey, anytime you feel foggy, man, I'll slap on the buzz killer and rip your shoulder right out of socket. Wolfpack style!
Hey, funky boy. Like there's a choice here? Good God! Pick the man with the plan. Pick DDP.
Hey, all you suckers out there, you wanna play the game? You wanna play with the big boy? Put your finger on the button, cause when you go down 110th Street, it's gonna be on like neck bone, sucker.
This is Booker T from Harlem Heat, hardcore OG brother from 110th Street. If any of you punks got the guts to step up to the plate, push the button.
Yo, Chico, you selected Scott Hall? Get ready for a wild ride on the outside. Hey there! How'd you like to get power pop? Come on, pick me. I'm begging you, pick me. Please pick me.
You think you got the courage to step in the ring? I think you're gonna wind up in a snap neck from the choke slam.
Technical wrestler, high flyer, brawler. Don't matter what you consider yourself to be. When you're in the ring with the crippler, you're a loser.